So it has been pouring for I don't know how long, over an hour, and you can see how we're above the drain pipe by several inches. So that's how intense this downpour is, and why it's good that the reservoir here has the capacity for like another foot of water before it actually overflows. You can see this one coming from the visor is intense water coming from up there. So this is also going down into that water feature. But this drainage pipe here is able to keep up with this intense flow here. And then where it's all going, I'll show you that. So even this one is overflowing out of its overflow area there, which that's the one that I intend to fill. But if I fill it, it's going to end up coming out of this same one here. So this is like a stream coming out of here. Look at this. How intense all this water is. This is the flow coming out of both the water feature and an extra drain point inside. This was empty before it started raining. Oh man, I'm gonna get the phone wet, but it's got like 6 inches of water in there. So, anyways. Oh, and then here's this one. This is from this drain feature here. But even this is overflowing from this corner, and some of it, is still getting over here. So I've got a little bit to do on that drainage project. And this is like one of the most, I guess this is probably the max intensity rainfall thus far. And it's sustained. I mean, that's like 4 inches in probably 2 hours or something. So lots of rainfall. And a good test of the drainage system, where it's performing quite well. Though, oh shit, look, this is now getting beyond that. I was wondering why there's a little bit of water over there before, so I didn't think this would ever get that intense. But maybe if I take this off, there, now it's staying in the barrel. But the barrel is not keeping up with the flow of water, and that's partly because this isn't draining fast enough. Probably because the pipe here, the overflow pipe, is underwater, so I'm going to go cut it so that it stays above the water line. Alright, so I just cut this. The pipe was longer than it needed to be, and this was going underwater, so it was fighting the water level pressure. And now you can see the end of it right here is above the water line. So hopefully that will help over here. And when it gets totally full, it'll build a suction and get all the water out of the line. And you can see the storm intensity has passed as this has gone down. So, a good test of the capacity. Yeah, everything is starting to drain better. Over here, the drain pipe isn't working ideally for this section because the water is not getting access to the drain fully, and so surface water is still running off there and clogging up a little bit right there, which can probably best be resolved by just excavating out around the edge of this this drain pipe, which the top of it is covered with mortar, but the mortar isn't covering the holes. It's just that the backfilling of dirt is. So if I trench out a little bit around the pipe, it'll be able to drain better. But a bit of update from that. Look at that, it's even got a vortex. Oops. Or you can see the my phone's doing something annoying right now. Or it's zoomed in as far as it can go. But it's got one of those little tornado-y type things because it's sucking water so intensely. And it looks like it's about 1 inch above the water level. So all good to know as far as how everything is performing. So here we are up on the castle wall, and the facade is only a year old, and it's actually very thin mortar. And it's not structural, it's basically just holding itself in place. So you can see there's a number of cracks that have been sealed, and those are basically all a result of the ground shifting, most likely because of ice. And they're just like small cracks, or if you don't seal them, then water will get in and ice, and over time they'll just get worse. And so this is very thin for cement, the whole thing, the whole walkway here. You can get kind of an idea by looking at the width of the visor there. That's basically like the width of the whole thing. It's like 2 inches max, but more like 1 inch on average of mortar with metal sandwiched in between it. Lath and remesh, and in some places rebar, but surprisingly little rebar. And then the facade ends there, and then at some point I'll extend it to the garage structure, but maybe at that lower level or at a middle level. But what I'm excited to do now, to get to the point, is to fill this final arch, which has been a drain, and get the water to drain up there. And in order to do that, I have to fix the drainage part first, because the first place it would drain, if the corner is not a drain and it's filled up to this ridge here, is it's going to drain right down into there. So I got to start on the connecting that tunnel, which I was working on weeks ago, and so that goes in. I'm standing on top of the front door right by the I'm going to work on the connecting the tunnel to the garage structure, and then putting a drain in at the bottom for now. And then once that's all done, I can focus on filling this so it goes pretty far down, and then mounting a flagpole in this corner for the corner of the castle here. So it's going to take a lot of concrete. I only have 10 bags right now, so I don't know if that'll be enough. And then I'm either going to mount that metal beam from the living room, or there's one other metal pole around here, and I might mount that instead. I haven't decided yet. But in order to get to that, like I said, I'm going to start on the tunnel down there. Look at this wheelbarrow. This was empty before the rain. It's full to just like barely before overflowing, like as full as it could get without overflowing, so I'm sure some overflowed. And that is gotta be all of 8 to 10 inches. That's how much rain we got yesterday. And you can see in the buckets too, the water level. The one closest to the building had a bit of cover from the rain. But that is a ton of rain. I haven't seen so much rain in such a short period of time here before. I was planning to, goes off the second I start talking. I was planning on weeding out this little area that was overgrown right here, and getting a stone delivery here And then last night the cows got in here and did like most of the work for me. And also, which you can see in the rain video, but forgot to show in the last report, is that I think this is after 2 coats, and so it's pretty much, you can see the whole shape of it. It's kind of hard to tell depth with the gray on this, but pretty much mortared flush with the whole thing. And then because it is all attached with foam, I guess the foam wasn't finished, not this thing, but obviously behind it, the foam wasn't finished curing, so it ended up, I guess, like pushing out a little bit, but there was these tiny little cracks around there, so I'm put some sort of cement caulking in there before adding a third and final coat for the door. The time has come to cut this drain pipe and commit to the corner flagpole project and drain fill. And that's all it was a pipe with some insulation around it. And so now just mortar over it. So I filled the bottom of the drain hole and then mortared over the overflow there. So now totally committed. And I got to figure out the next steps before it rains, and we're just filled with a giant puddle of water there. This pole here, which I think is 10 feet, had broken on one end, and this, I don't know where I found it, but this is now going in as the first section of the flagpole, and the end that it was broken will go down into the mortar. And then this end actually has a coupling, which I'm hoping to be able to have another piece of steel that will screw right into that. But I figure since I just put some mortar in there, I might as well bring this up and try to get it placed and see if that makes sense for now. So this is what the tunnel, as I'm starting the mortar on this side, what it looks like after one batch. I've got the drain pipe roughly in place. Here I've just got the first mortar smeared against the existing structure and connecting to the lath and remesh a bit on there. And then I've got this one section that'll get some connection on all of it, all the way down to the corner. And then got a good bit of the ceiling, which hadn't been done already. And all this will need to dry before I'll be able to apply a second coat, which will really provide the first structural kind of strength to it. So that's that 10-foot pole. It doesn't even get to the top, but that's how well it'll be anchored in. And then I found this piece of rebar, or I salvaged it from the greenhouse. I'm going to bend it to try to get it in line with that crack there to reinforce that and keep it closer to the wall. And then pour a half batch of wet concrete in, which will shouldn't get up to where the overflow drain is down there, which won't be able to hold it yet, but it should be just enough to kind of anchor these two pieces in. So that worked pretty well. I was able to use the rebar to kind of tamp in the concrete down there. I don't know if you can see it with the light. I can't see it, but I don't think it blew the thing out. I'll go see from down below. And then I bent this rebar piece just like that to keep it as close to the wall as possible. And it's not exactly level, but it's kind of pointing in the direction that I want. So that's all good, and can clean up and leave this for probably later today. Check out how clear the water is after all that rain. It all cleared up, and you can see in there really well. We'll see if we can spot some fishes. one. The others are hiding. I'm gonna get on to do some cement. This corner mortaring over the drain is now secure enough that I can do the whole top. So I'll head top side, check it out up there before getting going with the cement mixing. So here we are up top looking down, and that's the current, I don't know if you can see the current level of it's hard to see, of the cement down there. It still looks somewhat wet, but not like pooling water, which it was kind of pooling after there ended up being rain yesterday. But I put a half bag of dry mortar in, or dry cement in, and worked it in, and that soaked up most of the water. So I think I'm going to start with cement and then move on to the mortar. So over here from above you can see that there's more mortar connecting this tunnel to that structure. I don't want to do the whole thing because this raspberry plant, which is right here, has been bearing fruit and rewarding me for saving its life and not killing it. And so I'm just gonna go up maybe another foot, maybe to the end of the remash, and start to just add more mortar up here. I'll have to do some wire ties, and I'll check in after some of that stuff is done. So after 4.5 bags of cement in there, it's up to that level. It's a bit wetter than I want, and so I'm gonna add a bunch of stone on top and work that in. And then what I've realized, since I only have like 3.5 bags of cement left, and it's not nearly enough to fill this, is I'm going to do Aircrete next, because I've got 2 bags of Portland. So I'm going to do at least 1 batch of Aircrete, if not 2, to help fill the gap. And also it will help to insulate this roughly 400 pound stone that will soon be all cured. Alright, so I got that bucket of stone in up top. Took out the 2x4s that were supporting it and recovered the cord, cleaned them both. And this is looking pretty great as far as consistency now. I'm just going to, it's not totally fixed in place. I got a little bit of room for adjustment. So I'm going to get it perfectly level how I want it. And then use some of these things to kind of potentially wedge in there, so that it stays exactly where I want it while all that cures. And by the time that cures, this will be won't be going anywhere, that's for sure. And I'll probably let it cure for a bit before I move on to the Aircrete, which I'll probably do later today, roughly, or the afternoon at least. So I'm gonna get this all level, and then I'll move on to that tunnel junction there. Alright, so it's quite a process to do Aircrete, but I got all the stuff up here. So I'll give you kind of the overview. We've got 1 bag of Portland, 94 pounds. Got a paddle mixer. We've got altogether should be 7 gallons of water, a big 50-gallon barrel, which it should get completely fill this barrel. 1 bag of that with foam, Drexel foam, a half cup of foam, mixed into this Aircrete machine thing from Honeydew Carpenter, the YouTube channel. And the Drexel foam came by recommendation of Aircrete Harry YouTube channel. And there's power up here and pressure air, which I have set probably higher than it should be set at like 75 psi. I think I want to lower that down to 60-ish. And this mixes the foam water solution under air pressure, and then foam comes out of this after I mix up the slurry of water and Portland. And then here's the setup over here. I decided to bring up 1-inch stone because I didn't want to fill the whole thing with Aircrete because well, for multiple reasons, but primarily because this is a structural integrity thing. The stone is already providing the weight and ensuring that these arches won't move at all, so that everything stays under compression strength. And the foam, the goal is that there's already, I think, 6 buckets of stone there, so it's pretty thick, like a foot thick at least. So the idea is that the foam is going to seep down into all the cracks and then come above the stone layer. So it's going to be a stone plus Aircrete for most of it, and then it'll probably be some inches of Aircrete on top of that. And then I'm going to end up capping the whole thing with cement and mortar to make sure it's all waterproof. So this is the first time I've done a pouring over a thick amount of stone like this with the Aircrete, but I'm thinking it will penetrate into there because of all of the foamy substrate. So we'll see how it goes. So here's the foam machine in action. You can see the foam going up through, and here it is coming out nice and thick. And I gotta start mixing, keep it mixing, get it all integrated with the Portland, and then I'll get a shot as I pour or after or something. Something happened with the power at the last minute. I'm thinking it might be because of this crap wiring job I did by hand and with the zip tie a while back. But I don't know exactly, but I'm gonna figure that out later. I'm just gonna mix the rest of this in by hand, I guess, and hopefully that works. I didn't get it perfectly mixed all the way to the top, but it's good enough. Here goes nothing. You can see the foamy consistency. And I'm gonna dump that all out, scrape it. So once it's all poured, that's how it looks. Now I'm going to cover that with a sheet of plywood and figure out the electric issue. And I think I'm gonna do one more batch of Aircrete. So we got one more bag of Portland. I've got all this set up, and I imagine there's gonna be a lot of slump in that as it slowly works its way into all those cracks in the rocks. Alright, so here we go. Ready for the second pour. And that should get up to the level pretty nicely where the rest of the cement that I have left will cause the water to shed. But I'll get a shot after I empty the barrel. So there's round 2. We're just about up to water shedding level, but not quite. And depending on how well I mixed it, that'll determine how much it slumps. We'll see. But I'm going to cover it with plywood now after I wet the walls with water. I mounted a little piece of Trex up there in the mortar. I need to add a little bit more to stabilize it, but that'll be a probably like a little screw-on anchor point for a light out here, I'm thinking. Good morning, it's Friday morning here. Here's how the Aircrete has slumped. It's kind of hard to get the angle. It's slumped a good bit, which I expected. That's why I did 2 batches. And now I've got some mortar, which I'm going to use to fill all these cracks. And then I'll let that mortar dry a bit before adding the final cement that will cause the water to shed. So after that batch of mortar, all of those cracks, those slump cracks, are all filled, and getting into the cracks against the wall. So this creates a good base. It'll bond with the Aircrete, so that Aircrete underneath is still pretty fragile. If I would have just poured a bunch of cement over it, it would cause it to crumble or collapse more. So by putting kind of in a fragile manner, or I don't know, just by putting wet mortar on it in such a way that it can fill the cracks and doing it gently, it causes minimal of the Aircrete to collapse. And then once this dries, this will be the base for the concrete, and then it'll all be bonded together well. So probably the end of today is when I will be putting the last 4 bags of concrete into this corner, which ought to get it up high enough. So you can see how this tunnel is progressing from the inside. This is where the mortar has been added to the outside of the lath, which is the diamonds, and then you see the remesh kind of in the squares. And so once it's been added to the outside in one layer and it's dried enough, hey girl, then it's ready for a smear coat on the inside. And then that's what really adds the structural integrity and bonds it to this structure. Just gotta cut the wires out first. You ready, girl? Alright. After a batch of mortar, you can see all of the exposed lath gets covered. And that's coat 2 onto the structure. Here you can see the raspberries. I've already eaten a handful of raspberries just from this one plant, but it's got more ripe ones giving its bounty. So glad that I built around that one. And this one you can see is making all sorts of raspberries also. Next project is going to be clearing out this patch of weeds, moving this picnic table, and if possible, getting a delivery of sand and stone today. So we'll see how it goes. But first, breakfast. So the mortar has dried enough to be able to apply the cement on top of it, and it'll protect the Aircrete underneath of it. And I put some rebar and some barbed wire in there for a little added tensile strength. The first half of the cement and then the other half after. So after 2.5 bags, I think, I got all the barbed wire covered. I bent the end of the rebar and got that cemented in. And the idea is to pull the cinder block and the wood before it's fully cemented in. But when the cement is dry enough to hold the rebar and the barbed wire in place without needing the weight on it. And then over here, it turns out, well, I put down landscaping fabric on that whole area to potentially prepare it for sand and or stone, but after calling the places, it turns out the price has basically doubled. And so I'm potentially rethinking my plan, but this is looking good. I've got 1.5 bags of cement left, I think, and it's looking like that will be just enough to finish this. But probably not today, or if today, at the very end of today. So it's the end of the day. Here's what this looks like after the blocks are removed. And I got the last 1.5 bags of cement, which I'm going to apply in there. And then just make it as level as I can and fill those holes. So here's how it looks after all smooth. That's the last of the concrete that I have. But I've got 1 more bag of lath. 1 more bag of mortar mix. So I think I'll bring up some lath and some mortar mix. And see if I can bend the lath and get it kind of sit in this wet cement and then I'll probably save the mortar for tomorrow. Here's how I'm adding the lath. This one has a 90 in it because the end of this wall here is somewhat unsupported, so it's giving extra support strength, and based on where the other cracks are, it's basically covering up all the stress points. And then similar here, the lath will help that rebar apply to that whole section of insulation wall and then tie it into the bottom as well. The other things are just leaning on them to keep them in the right shape. I'll go mix a half batch of mortar, half of that bag, and get a first coat on this lath and then around the edges, and then tomorrow I'll have 1/2 bag left to kind of clean up the rest of it, and I should be able to get it to shed with the available materials, meaning shed water, so that it doesn't pool up in the corner anymore here. So after that half bag of mortar, I've got the lath anchored in multiple spots, so that once that dries I can take all those stilts away or reapply them to get it tighter in other places. And then the rebar with the barbed wire wrapped around it is now covered all the way to there, so it's like, it kind of looks like when this dries it's going to be so close to shedding water, as far as bringing it down there and then over the top there and then down to there. But I'm sure at this point it'll still pool a bit. I'm not sure if 1/2 bag of mortar is enough to fill all the low spots, but once this dries tomorrow I can do a water test and get a good idea of how much more material is needed, and then I'll do a supply trip. I got the last support beam 2x in place so that this 2x4 is framed across the whole ceiling, and we're ready. The eggs are only 2 days away and ready to take this beam out. If you noticed, I started the flagpole with another pole that I have, and I've got another plan for this thing now, which is gonna be really cool, but it'll be a surprise for next week, I think. But for now, I'm just gonna take it out. Chainsaw massacre. So I managed to cut it with the chainsaw without hitting the 2x4 or cutting the pipes. At some point I'll hack away the rest of it, and then as soon as I got through it, the whole thing fell. I wasn't really sure how that was gonna happen, but I guess I should have anticipated that. So the beam is free, the roof has not collapsed, and it even like ripped itself free on this side. So huzzah, who's happy? The beam is free from the wall. The post is cut. This is all framed now. And I got a bunch of cuts in the post to help get it loose. And it is just so liberating to walk through here without having to duck or potentially hit my head on that metal piece finally. And because I resisted cutting that metal for so long, it is gonna be useful in the next surprise project, which I will show you probably next week, unless I just get a bit too ambitious and I do it sooner. It is Friday night, and we've got the first pips, and the chickies have started making noise. And Lou is very interested. I counted at least 5 pips. And the 10 on the left are probably, I guess they're due is the word, in the next day. And then the 8 on the right are like 4 days behind. I moved the incubator over here to plug it into the other battery bank. The battery bank which is in the shipping container, as opposed to up here, because the one up here was giving a warning sign that it's getting low. And what a tragedy that would be for the incubator to turn off now when they're all So close. But I'm about to go to sleep. There might be some hatched in the morning, and if not, I'm guessing at least 5 will likely hatch tomorrow. It's Saturday morning, September 17th. Hey, cutie. How's it going? Yeah. These guys are working their way out. Little peepers. Someone's born early in the morning. I think it's Aurelia, or maybe Orwell. Seems like it's the name of the first comer. And then we got some peepers all around. You cutie? Yeah. I picked it up once, but really it's like 100 degrees in there, so it's nice and warm in there, and that's really a better place for them to be. But I'll pick it up and give it a little more attention, and then put it back in before it gets too cold. So it's Saturday morning. It's a bit chilly. Got down to like low 40s last night, I think, which is probably the lowest it's been thus far this year. So I just removed the things that were holding those in place. But this isn't like all that well cured because it just had overnight and it was so cold. So I don't want to really stress it. The chickies are currently emerging. There's 3 of them so far. And I gotta do a supply trip. I'm gonna do a little water test right here though to see what the water does. So there, it's going off to the proper drainage. And here, everywhere where it pools is where I need to add more material. So clearly, it's got a ways to go, but you can see from there that it's not very far from getting over the crest of this arch here to being able to drain. So that's the low point, obviously, where the biggest pool is. Right here, they're basically staying still. It's kind of like level there. So if I add that last batch of mortar onto here, it'll get pretty close. It might not get far enough though, and hence I gotta make a supply trip and get some more materials so that this can get fully completed before the forecasted rain in the coming days. So that's the goal for today. And by the way, here's the beam up here. Still gotta surprise you on what I'm gonna do with it. I'm about to go on a supply trip. It's Saturday morning. Here's the first 3 chicks moving all about in their nice heated little incubator, drying off. And I think I changed the orientation of this so you can see the other ones are working their way out. We'll check back in on them later. So after a bit more mortar, a bit more concrete, the runoff I would say is about 95 to 98% complete. You can see right here how it runs off, and just about all the low points are removed. I'll just wait till tomorrow, do another water test, and then work on mortaring up this lath wall reinforcement. By tomorrow the post should be completely solid. That thing's just holding it there to get it exactly level. And this is basically, if it rains before I can do more mortar, this will be fine. But if I can get more mortar on tomorrow, I will do that before the rain comes. We got 5 little peepers. It's Sunday morning. It's supposed to rain around noon, so I just did a bag of mortar up there, which should be the final one to get all the water to shed by the flagpole. And this is these chickies' first time out of the incubator, pooping in the food. And the incubator, I took the egg turner thing out, so I've just been kind of rotating them by hand. And there's one, this one here obviously is trying to hatch, and there's one more that's trying to hatch, and then the next batch of 8 will probably be coming along in the next couple days. So ideally they'd all be at the same timing, but I didn't have the second batch of 8 when I started the first 10, so. But these 5 are all doing good. This is their first food, actually. Saying, "Ooh, what's all this food stuff?" They're full of energy and warm, and before too long they'll probably get chilly and want to go back into the heated incubator. So we got Speedy on the left, Bumble on the left of the bowl, Dapple on the right of the bowl, and then the brown one is Coco, and I think this one is Orwell, or Aurelia. This one's really trying to come out. It's having trouble. I just cracked the egg to help it a little more. Hopefully that's a good thing. And when these ones get cold, I'll put them back in the incubator. They were starting to get chilly, so after a little snack, they went back in the incubator. And they can stay in there and warm up. And then I'll put them back out into the box a little bit later today. So I was able to do one more application of mortar early this morning, like before 7. There's supposed to be rain in a couple hours, and so this should be just enough time for this to dry before the rain comes. Got most of this lath covered. That one's still got a bit where, I got more on there, but it's got to get real solid so I can really bend that lath to get it closer to the wall there. But it should all shed water now, and it needs to get cleaned up a little bit. And chicken's making a fuss. Get the very end of that all mortared in, which will come in time. It looks like we got a number of days of rain, so it'll probably be a bit of a pivot. But I'm glad I was able to get this amount done so far today. And yep, they're sleeping. This is number 6. Number 6 is having a tough time getting out. It's been struggling for days. Or a day, I don't know. So I was helping it get out. Maybe it got too dry or something and the mucous membrane was too tough. Last year I had 3 survive hatching, and then one was something like this, and that one didn't survive. And then the 2, Sammy and Spot, survived. So I'm hoping this one does better. I'm holding its hand, and also helping give it leverage to push against so it can try to break free. But that's all this one's camera appearance on its very first moments out of the shell. These ones are doing good. Eating and drinking. Picking around with the kiwis. No fur balls. And this one, look at it go. Yeah. I hope they get out of its shell and then put it back in the incubator. So it just kicked off the last of its shell and it's gonna start drying off. The main thing is to just do everything really slowly and gently, and even if it can't get up now and it's struggling, it's better to leave it in there and not help it. Actually, no, the humidity's too high in there, so I will air it out a bit. Oh no, the humidity's fine. I thought it said 99, but it's 66. That's a good percentage for humidity. Oh, look at it go! It's still got half the shell holding onto it. I think once it starts drying off and it starts getting a little more fluffy, it might take several hours, or it might even take longer than that to grow skin. So instead of trying to help peel the egg off of it and potentially damage it, letting it be like that for a while so it grows new skin, and then it'll just work its way out and just be a little bit stunted compared to the other ones. But that's all good. I can show you something kind of sad, which is this one. So this one was like all fully formed and had made a peeped its way out, but then I don't know what happened to it, but it stopped moving and it had some goo coming out of the pip hole. So I figured I might as well try to open it up, and it was already dead by the time I opened it up. So I don't know why, but that one died. It's been raining all day. We got 6 chickies here, and yesterday it was raining too, so it's been 2 unproductive days, but I'm taking care of the chickies. They're doing good. So we got 6 out of 10 from the first batch, which is a lot better than the last batch I incubated. But eventually I would like to get 10 out of 10. But the chickies are all doing good, and I guess this will probably be the last video for this week. I'll compile it all and post it in a little bit.